I've made my thoughts on the Nintendo Switch 2 abundantly clear. Some of you didn't like it, some of you did. That's fine. But in the 60 seconds leading up to me turning this camera on, I had a quick scroll through 2 YouTube shorts, and there are more people that are not happy with this thing. Now, there's a few things we're going to do today. We're going to actually compare this thing in terms of the screen quality and the sound with the OLED and a Switch Lite. And then I've also made some notes about additional things that I've not spoken about. And I'm also, believe it or not, going to go and pick up my Nintendo Switch Pro Controller 2 that I'm using with store credit that I've got in a shop, my local store. So I'm not really spending my money. We're going to unbox it and take a look at that as well. So please get comfy. Before you comment, make sure you watch this entire episode. My first point is this. The welcome tour. Here in the UK, it's $7.99. In the US, it is $10. And I've seen very mixed reviews. A lot of people are saying this is great. It shows the hardware, navigating your little character around the hardware on the screen. And it shows what some of that hardware can do in terms of the mouse functionality. Lots of different things, basically, that you can do within the welcome tour. But people are screaming that it costs $10 or $7.99. Now, okay, that is pretty darn cheap. However, when you're spending £430 on the console, people are saying actually that should have been bundled in for free. As with the launch of the PlayStation 5, if I get my words out, and Astro's Playroom, which was completely free and really utilised the functionality of the DualSense controller. It was the first game I played on my PS5 on launch day, and I was absolutely hooked. The only problem with that was not many games use the full functionality of the DualSense. However, Astro's Playroom is great and it's free. Now it's easy to compare the two, and I will say as a disclaimer, I have not played the welcome tour. The reason is I don't want to give Nintendo additional money than I'm already spending, so I'm just going to utilise the reviews that I've seen online and say, do you know what? It is not for me. I would rather pick up the console myself, as I have done in my previous 2 episodes, and vibe my way through and make my own decision, and I've concluded that I'm not going to spend £7.99. Yes, I'm buying a Pro 2 controller, but I'm using store credit that I traded in a load of PS2 games for that I previously got for pennies back in the charity shop. Charity shops were good on retro game hunts years ago, so it's not really costing me anything per se. So I think those criticisms online appear valid. It should have been bundled in for free. Nintendo have this amazing ability just to kind of continue to rinse consumers, and I read a lot of your comments on my previous Switch 2 video saying, Gemma, you're a part of the problem because you're buying all this stuff and you need to stop buying all this stuff. Now, as a content creator, that's really strange because you kind of need to buy it to have an opinion on it. Welcome tour, I'm going to pass, but I have since made a decision, because I was toing and froing on this, that I am going to be buying Donkey Kong Bonanza so I can have my opinion, so I can test it out on my live stream, and I can see, maybe save some people, my audience, some money. I can say buy it or don't, and then it's down to you. So the welcome tour, I think, would have been a nice welcome addition to the console on launch for free, but instead it is another downside that people are being asked, and you can choose to pay for it or not. Let's talk console memory. Natively, the Switch 2 has 256GB worth of memory. Compare that to, say, the PlayStation 5 with 1TB memory. That is a significant difference, and there wasn't much difference in terms of price. So if I wanted to upgrade my Nintendo Switch 2, of course I'd have to buy the SD cards. Now, for a 256GB SD card for the Switch, it is $49.99, meaning I would need to spend almost £150 to take my console storage up to 1 TB, which is absolutely astronomical considering if you get the Mario Kart bundle, you've already paid $430. If you don't, you've paid $380. You're already paying a lot of money for the console, and then you're having to pay a lot more for the storage. Now, that is something like the welcome tour that I've not spoken about in my previous 2 videos, and it is another thing for me that I'm saying this still doesn't feel right, guys. The Nintendo Switch 2 is still almost having gamers having a laugh, having a joke. The joke's on us, and it's on me essentially, because I'm part of that consumer issue, that consumer problem here. So I wanted to know what you guys think about that. Have you picked up any of the SD cards? I know a couple of you on my Discord have. For me, I'm not interested. I'll just delete a game and install it, delete a game and install it. And even my dog's got up, even she's passionate about the Nintendo Switch 2. Ain't that right, Molly? Now, there are lots of conversations on the internet about how Hogwarts is performing on the Nintendo Switch 2. The question is, will you buy a Nintendo Switch 2 just to play Hogwarts? Or will you just pay less price and buy a PS5 and play it in a much better, graphically aesthetic approach. And the same can be said about Cyberpunk. I said in my second Switch 2 video that it did look really nice, surprisingly so, for such a little console like the Switch 2 in terms of its size, its overall feel. It's like a glorified iPad. This thing does pack a punch and it runs Cyberpunk very well. But you need to ask yourself a question. Are you going to spend £430 on a Nintendo Switch 2 to play an inferior version of the game? If you do, more power to you. Me, that doesn't make sense. I'd rather spend the money on an Xbox Series X or a PS5 and play a better version of the game. So this is the third point I feel I'm making in this episode, where the Switch 2 still isn't living up to that par. And again, people were having their own 2 cents, saying that I was wrong, and that's fine, that's fine. We can have some healthy, mature debate about this in the comment section. Now, for me personally, I am not going to play many third-party games on my Switch 2. I want first-party stuff. I want a new Zelda game. Metroid's coming out. Animal Crossing, there's been a little rumour of that. Pokemon, I can live without, but I would love to try a new Pokemon game on the Nintendo Switch 2, none of which appeared at launch. And again, games sell consoles, surely you wouldn't just buy a console without any games. But in this essence, I did. Mario Kart World, I've spoke about it at length and how I exhausted it in 8 hours on my second Switch video. If you want to watch it, it'll be located in the cards. And again, doing my research for this video, a lot of people have been saying that online, that open world is pretty boring. The idea was incredibly innovative, but unfortunately it hasn't executed. And yes, we can get it pumped into the DLC and the updates, but this is something that I kind of feel like the reputation of the Nintendo Switch 2 is tainted beyond a successful comeback. I really don't think the Switch 2 will do as well as the Nintendo Switch did. Okay, overall, it is the fastest selling console of all time, but we'll see how that spreads out in the overall lifespan of the console and what that translates to in further game sales. Okay, so what we're going to do next, we have the Nintendo Switch 2, we have the OLED, and I have one of my Switch Lites. We're going to be comparing the screen with my own eyes. There's no digital foundry technology here. This again is a user experience and you can see it for yourself. We'll put some side-by-side comparisons on. We'll also listen to the sound and we'll check out load times as well. So let's take a look at that. Kicking off with the tabletop mode, the Switch 2 really does look nice. I think the vibrancy of the Mario Kart 8 Deluxe graphic here really does do it justice. Of course, we're going to be taking a look at the OLED as well as the Lite. Now, this was my first time trying Mario Kart 8 Deluxe on the Nintendo Switch 2, and I think it looked pretty darn nice. I very rarely use any Switch, of course, other than the Lite, as a handheld. My preferred choice of playstyle is definitely docked and through the TV or a gaming monitor. So I thought we'd give this a little tilt test. You can see here the LCD screen does dull very much when you twist it, turn it, whatever you want to call it. But again, who's going to play that? Who's going to actually notice that? This thing really does look nice, but unfortunately next to the OLED, I don't think it looks as great. This is my preferred Switch over anything, whether it's handheld, tabletop, docked, and as you twist this thing here, you'll see that it definitely maintains its colour. Of course, this is an OLED screen, and I think it just looks absolutely great. Even at full tilt, the vibrancy still remains true, unlike the Switch 2. So again, I think that does look really, really nice. But the Lite is, of course, the inferior handheld out of all three, but even this looks pretty decent when you tilt it. I think the vibrancy does look pretty decent for a definitely an inferior console. And this is just a great machine. I've really enjoyed my lights over the years. This is one that I take travelling with me if I go on holiday. I leave the others at home, and I'd like to know which ones you take when you go travelling. Do you just take your base model, or do you just not even bother whatsoever? So I think what's important for me now is to say, yes, this does look great on the Lite, but the side-by-side comparison, the OLED definitely takes it for me. So let's talk more about the Lite then. What I want to do is a boot up test, and I was a little blown away, and something happened that I can't really explain, as I thought that the Switch 2 would boot faster. But listen to this. 3, 2, 1, press in. Wait, the Switch Lite booted faster than the Switch 2? Surely not. So I took it upstairs, got a wider angle, and we're going to try it again.
3, 2, 1, press.
So this Nintendo Switch Lite boots faster than my Nintendo Switch 2. I have no explanation for that, and if you think you do, I want to hear from you in the comment section below. But how does the Nintendo OLED fare in terms of booting?
3, 2, 1, press.
To the naked eye, there is a marginal difference. The Switch 2 does, of course, boot faster than the OLED, but on the grand scheme of things, that doesn't really matter. You can still play your games, and overall, that is what's important. Now let's check out volumes. So the Nintendo Switch 2 speakers really do pack a punch. This thing sounds absolutely fantastic at full volume. Of course, I'm not going to play it in full volume, but I just wanted to demo it for the sake of the video. In terms of the Switch Lite though, that also sounds fantastic, with the OLED, I say for my ears, definitely coming in third. Again, you've got to ask yourself the question, do you want to pay the ridiculous price tag for a Switch 2 to upgrade a marginal difference in the sound, or are you just going to stick with whatever model you've already got? That's the big question here, isn't it, really? Do you want to upgrade for the very, very slight differences? Some of them aren't even that great, let's face it. The weak lineup just absolutely discounts this thing for me completely. I'm so glad I got my Switch 2 by trading loads of old video games and consoles that I just don't care for in my collection. If I'd have paid for this out of my disposable income, I would have been pretty annoyed with myself. I need a few seconds of your time to tell you about channel memberships. If you guys want to become a channel member, click join from the main page or the second link in the description. There are 3 tiers, all with different perks for you if you want to become a team member. Thanks for your time. Let's continue with the video. One incredibly redeeming feature of the Nintendo Switch 2 is the sound. Listening to it there, it absolutely blew the other Switches away, and that was at full volume. It sounded really nice. There was some great bass. Not that I would play it that loud in public, nonetheless, but I still think it's got a great pair of speakers on the Nintendo Switch 2. However, the OLED does just fine, and the Lite is okay. Now again, you want to ask yourself, are you gonna spend the money on a Nintendo Switch 2 because it has great speakers? Ask that yourself right now. I'm not going to answer it, you know the answer. In terms of load times, you saw that the Lite was actually indeed faster than the Nintendo Switch 2. Why? I don't know. Does it really matter in the grand scheme of things? No, not at all. But it was just something that I wanted to illustrate to you again to show that a much cheaper console iteration of a Nintendo Switch actually loads faster than the Nintendo Switch 2. OLED again looks great. It is my preferred Nintendo Switch. It does look great on the handheld, and it looks great here on the, I think it's a 50-inch there. So I will continue to play on my OLED for now, unless of course I'm making content about Switch 2 or the likes of Donkey Kong Bonanza, which is a Switch 2 exclusive. So let's go and get the Pro Controller 2. We're going to head over to Kirby Selson Exchange and pick that up, and then we'll share some thoughts.
Later.
Here it is. Packaging is unremarkable. Now, obviously, we're going to test it tonight. I'm going to sync it first. And again, I didn't pay $74.99. I used some trade credit. Old PS2 games that I got like £330 trade credit for. So this hasn't really cost me a great deal as I've had the PS2 games for quite some time. Wow, this is stubborn. Flipping heck. Stubborn. So we got the cable. It's really nice packaging, to be fair. In terms of its robustness, I'll give Nintendo that. And it is pretty much, oh, it's got this nice grey palette at the top. That's nice. That feels really, really nice, actually, that does. I will say, out of the box, off the bat, that does feel lovely. It feels slightly smaller than the Pro Controller, but that feels great. And obviously, we're going to play some Mario Kart 8 Deluxe tonight. As you know, I'm done with Mario Kart World for now. So we'll test this out. I'm going to use a headset as well, and then give some honest thoughts about this. I'm glad I didn't pay the full price. I don't believe this has haptic feedback. Obviously, if you get something like this beauty and then you play your PS5, you've got really nice haptic controls with this. So I think this is definitely more value than this and slightly cheaper. If it's a console war, you know, just something to bear in mind. But I actually like this, almost like a glitter shimmer as well, if you can see in the light. No, I like that. So let's give it a go, and then I'll come back to you in a couple of hours. Just a quick one side by side. We've got the Switch Pro Controller 1 looking really nice, and it's served me well over the years. Not much difference to look at other than the solid black on the front plate. So that's a 2-hour session complete with the Switch 2 Pro Controller, priced here at $74.99. We've got the other base model Pro Controller here. I much prefer the kind of see-through faceplate on this compared to this, but this, the Pro Controller 2, I don't know if it's something within my head, kind of feels more ergonomic. I don't know if it's that it's got this kind of weird rubber feel to it. I don't know what it is, but there's something, whether I've made it up or not, but this does feel a little bit more ergonomic and slightly smaller compared to this. Now, in terms of everything else, in terms of dimensions and whatnot, what I've actually noticed is that the plus and minus buttons on the Switch 2 Pro Controller are actually way more pronounced, therefore making them easier to press than the standard base Switch controller. You can just make out the start and select rather, the plus and the minus buttons here compared to this. Now that is a definite welcome feature, one that I didn't think that I would really like. But for me, the absolute selling point on this is definitely the 3.5mm headphone jack on the bottom. Word to streamers, this disables HDMI and brings it so if you HDMI sound, it will pull it away from the capture card and it will pull it into the headset itself. So if you are a streamer and you want to use a headset, you're going to need an additional cable to be able to have the audio running through your streaming software such as OBS. The way I get around that on the PlayStation 5 is to use an Elgato Link Chat Pro cable, whatever it's called. That didn't work on this. So be mindful, if you're a streamer, you either need an additional cable to be able to use a headset with this, so you actually get game audio through OBS, or just don't use a headset, simple as. So in my stream last night, I didn't use a headset, but before I went live, I used a basic Apple headset, so nothing special, and it sounded fantastic through this thing. It really did sound fantastic. So this definitely feels more ergonomic than the regular Pro Controller. Now, other things I really like about it, it's super duper light. I love the programmable buttons on the back there. I haven't used them yet, but this is the weirdness in me. This is the kind of weird, I don't know if it's neurodiverse or what. I just found them comfortable to press as I was playing. That sounds silly, but maybe that's the kind of vibe about the ergonomics that little bit more. This is a really nice controller. On the top, you've got the I always say my PlayStation head, L1, R1, R2, L2, etc. These feel great. They're exactly the same shape as what you've got on the base model Pro Controller. I do like this grey against the black there. So I think this is a really, really nice controller. Obviously, you've got the C button there. That's a new feature, chat button. Not going to be using it, so it's kind of a redundant feature for me. In terms of the price point, I think that's one of the major downsides for me. $74.99. I only got this because I traded a lot of old PS2 stuff in. didn't really cost me real money. So you need to ask yourself the question, do you want to spend $74.99 on this for your Switch 2, or are you going to stick with this? If you want to save some cash, I'd stick with this. I don't think the features are worth the upgrade. I've always wondered why they never included a 3.5mm headphone jack on this. I thought it was insane not to be able to kind of run audio through your controller. But if you like your audio, you've also got that benefit, that feature there. So yeah, it's a nice controller, but it still doesn't detract from the fact that the Switch 2 is an absolute rip-off, and the fact that you need to pay to upgrade your storage makes it even worse. I still, to this very day, don't think it's worth you upgrading your Switch 2 unless you trade in or you've never played a Switch before. If you've never played a Switch before, the Switch 2 is perfect for you. So Donkey Kong Bonanza is out, and I've been pulling backwards and forwards. Yes, no, yes, no, yes, no. And as a player, I am still done with the Switch 2. As a content creator, I am not done with the Switch 2. Therefore, I'm going to be buying Donkey Kong Bonanza to be able to play it on stream, to be able to make my own mind up as to whether or not I like it. At the minute, I'm right on the fence with it. I've watched more things since the initial announcement video came out, and there's a few things that have really warmed on me. I just think it looks gorgeous. I think it looks really gorgeous, and for some reason I didn't pick that up on the initial Nintendo Direct, but I've since noticed that Nintendo have really been pushing that game and marketing it, and I think it looks really nice. So will I play the Switch 2 off stream? No. Will I play it if I'm not making a video? No. I've got the OLED here. It is ample for what I need. It's my favourite model. Will I make more Switch 2 content if there's stuff there? If not, then who knows. So Donkey Kong Bonanza will be next to me for the Switch 2 as a content creator. Let me know some of your thoughts in that comment section below. And please, and just, yeah, see you in the next one. We've got one of the largest retro game shops in England to show you on Thursday's episode. So a massive retro game hunt coming. Little cheeky plug there. But for now, cheers guys. See you in the next one.